Working, brilliant. I know we don't need mics in the room here, we've all got loud voices, but we are being recorded as well, which is why we're going to pass these back and forth along the line like some sort of elaborate parlour game. So welcome all of you. Thank you so much for turning out to the second live Bruntwood Works X NRB Spark seminar. And this time we're going to look at the future of hospitality experience. So welcome to the hundreds who are going to watch this digitally live now via the stream or on catch up, and obviously the 30 key audience members in the room here. We've got a real cross section from experienced operators, ambitious startups. We're all here at Bruntwood Works Blackfriars House. Little plug for them: if you haven't been in one of the Bruntwood Works spaces, do check them out. They're fabulous co-working spaces, meeting rooms, podcast facilities, wellness, all under one roof. Liverpool, Manchester, Leeds and beyond. If you need some space to work that isn't in your own venue, and we all know how valuable that can sometimes be, then do pop along, do give them a try. So the panel, first things first, we have a wonderful panel today, fantastic panel. Starting at the far end, we've got Robbie Barr, founder of the international hospitality concept agency Gorgeous Group. We work with almost every major global brand, from Soho House to the Savoy to Dishoom and Hakkasan. We've got Simon Stevens there, two people along, director of Super Friends Holdings, managing director at House of Food. They also own and operate Belgrave Music Hall, Hedgerow House, Water Lane Boathouse, the Beck and Call, and the Crown Hotel, all legendary venues there in Leeds. Closest to me, he insisted on sitting here, is Jamie Campbell, Director of Learning at CPL Learning, now part of the Access Group, who delivered digital training and development for Wagamama, The Alchemist, JW Lees, amongst others. And we should have had Andrea George, Regional Director of Bruntwood Works for Town Centres and Consumer Brands, which would have made it a battle for the longest title award. But unfortunately, she can't be here. And instead, representing Bruntwood Works, we have Senior Retail and Leisure Manager Chris Middleton, sat opposite. So I do apologise that we've ended up with the dreaded thing, a manel. It's by accident rather than design. We haven't done it before, we won't do it again. So just thought I should acknowledge that. So to kick off, we're going to go with an easy open-ended question. And my question is, for all of you, one by one, what's been the kind of the hospitality experience that you've had recently that's really stayed with you, really connected with you, really enjoyed? It can be any business, anywhere in the world. Just tell us where it's really stayed with you. And Simon, if I could ask you first of all.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. Yeah, well, I'm going to go back to a classic probably. We take some of our sort of general managers and key staff away. Well, we try to do it once a year. And we've been to New York a few times. And is that on now? Is that on now? Oh, no, yeah, there you go. So yeah, we're looking at set stuff away on the odd occasion. We've been to battery day, possibly. I'll crack on to that.
That's all right. We can all hear you,
Simon. So yeah, so in New York, it's somewhere that we keep going back to, Roberta's Pizza, and it just ticks all the boxes for us. It is, for anybody who's not been. Thank you. For anybody who's not been, it is the most. It's just fantastic, laid-back pizzeria in a very unusual spot in New York. The staff are incredibly knowledgeable, but it's very informal. The music's always fantastic, the service is always great, and the food's always brilliant. But it's somewhere that you can hang out for 5-6 hours, and rather than sort of going for a meal, it's somewhere that we always find that we spend most of the day. So that's somewhere we revisit every time we go back to New York. Always taking staff just to try and
show what can be achieved. Yeah.
And it's the services that kind of brings you back there each time. It's the human element.
It's everything. The food is fantastic as well. The pizza, it is just pizza. There's absolutely nothing wrong with pizza whatsoever. But the food's amazing. The produce that they use is great. It's the whole experience is good. Straight from entrance to the building, that sort of meet and greet from the staff is brilliant. Right the way through to 4 hours later, you're sat out on the terrace drinking natural wine and just having a jolly good time. So
That's brilliant. Jamie, if you're next in line, tell me about your recent great hospitality experience.
Difficult being a parent of small children to actually have an experience in hospitality, but I would say that
Yeah. Pops and stuff.
I think in all seriousness, with having small kids, Hickory's has been great, kind of managing kind of children, keeping them occupied, giving them popcorn, and little things that are quite functional but effective. On a bit more of a personal level, I think the not because of some presence in the room, but Ray, brilliant as well. And I think particularly personally because it was a big table, we've been a little bit awkward, or could have been awkward for them, and they're just really natural, deliver everything brilliantly. Everything's just great and natural, and doesn't feel like the kind of it's service. It just happens. So I think those are kind of two personal standouts for me.
Fantastic. And Chris, if going to ask you the same question.
Yeah, so like a lot of people, my main holiday this year was in Cornwall in the UK, and we did 2 nights in Falmouth and went to a restaurant called Restaurant Mine. It was a tiny space, literally the size of a sort of a kitchen in your house. It was 10 covers, open kitchen, really knowledgeable staff, friendly, and just a really nice atmosphere. Yeah, the wine list was great, food was good as well.
And we can finally come to you, Robbie. You're probably the most jet set of all of us. So I don't want you naming somewhere just on the corner near your house now.
I was going to talk about Pret, but actually Pret was amazing today. My sister came from Manchester to Canterbury for the weekend, and I went to the Pig Bridge on Saturday night, and it was phenomenal. Just sense of place, warm, great hospitality, just 25-mile menu, provenance, theatre, music, lighting, the whole thing came together. And my sister was just blown away. She works for the NHS and she didn't get out that much, especially without kids. So she was with us for the weekend and she just thought, wow, this is incredible. It wasn't Michelin star cooking or anything like that. It was just the whole package. It felt a bit like escapism. And she loved it. Because she loved it, I loved it because I was looking after her and taking her out for the weekend. So that was mine. It's always, I've been there a few times and pigs around the country. And they're always consistent, brilliant in terms of, and they know, the key thing is they know the audience inside out, which is really brilliant.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really, really key point. And it's quite interesting that all of your responses are quite kind of quite visceral, almost quite intangible. It's about kind of being there in that space. But there is an argument that hospitality experiences maybe shifted a little bit. It used to start with the curb appeal or with the greeting, the feeling as you walk into Schloss and you've got huge floral displays and all the rest of it. But it sometimes feels to me that your first interactions with a hospitality brand now start online. It's either through the social media, it's the website, it's the booking engine, which for me can kind of make or break how I interact with the restaurant, whether I can even face going there. And Jamie, I know Access Group, obviously a kind of end-to-end tech company. I don't know what thoughts or what research you've done on how tech is shaping the start of people's experience. Jamie, to you, sorry.
Cool, no, thank you. Just one microphone. Yeah, I think clearly there's lots of potential blockers along the way as part of the experience. And I think, on a personal level, I think in the most recent couple of weeks, I've not gone somewhere because I couldn't figure out how to book effectively. It was just annoying me. I was like, you know what, if it can't click 6 people or 5 or make it really simple, I'm just going to not do it. And, it might be a little bit flippant. I don't always do that, but it was just annoying me at the time. I think the kind of end-to-end side of it is important. It's just got to be, without any blemishes, just part of the experience. And I think, now there are more touch points more naturally within an experience because of order and pay and whatever else might be part of an experience. The chances of it not fitting the steps of service or fit naturally increase. And also, there's a lot of things that aren't necessarily thought about as effective as they could be. So, again, there's some good and bad experiences on a payment level. Wagamama with one of my small children last week, really amazing, really simple to split, and kind of we were talking before about kind of blending orders, so you can kind of wave your hand and order it on your app or order with the server as well. And again, dead easy to pay. You can just walk out, which is still slightly disconcerting personally. Yeah, and it just kind of fitting in and being able to add one drink without having to go around the whole process again. And we've got an experience together where that's been a frustration. You just want to be able to add one drink easily. We can kind of use the example again before. If you order a drink at a bar, someone doesn't walk away and come back and offer you the next drink again. So why would you do that when it's an app experience too, or a web experience too? So those are kind of the points to me as a consumer that frustrate, that I think can be thought about or slipped up in the relationship before.
And Simon, probably as the kind of the operator, the guy running venues here, this same question to you: how do you think about tech and how that starts the customer experience before they've even set foot through your doors?
Well, I suppose with House of Food's quite a good example. So that's launched this side of lockdown. So we launched in mid-July, I think it was in the end. It's not really on plan. But so we were, even before that step, we were building social media and Instagram and Twitter, getting that follower count up. So that was a really crucial thing for us, was to get that rolling before we even announced the launch day. But it's so important, going back to the booking systems and things like that. It was something that we spent a lot of time researching. With it being a new offer, we wanted the POS to talk to the booking systems, to talk to the website, and it needed to be, or we wanted it to be as seamless as it possibly can be. Trying something that you don't notice is generally a good system to use. So.
And do you think it's probably more important than ever that your marketing team, your operational team work together, because the experience is now slightly shaped by what your marketing team do beyond the venue as much as what your operational team do in the venue, and you need that continuity.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been on previous sites, it's been difficult to strike that balance, I suppose, that what makes somebody a great member of the front of house team doesn't necessarily translate into social media and that sort of knowledge to get the tone of that post right, or to take the right picture, get that lighting right. But again, it's something that we were very mindful of when we were staffing for House of Food. Is an important part of what we're trying to do.
I was having a look at some of the industry data actually, because I was very aware, I think we're all aware, that a lot of the human touch has been removed by COVID, whether it's masks, whether it's bar service, ordering on an app, paying on an app. We've got more runners, we've got fewer service staff. It feels quite a different thing. But interestingly, CGA's data, although tech was important, the vast majority of people still really put value on human interaction. There's a couple of headline stats here that I've pulled out. One of the main ones was that in terms of making a good experience, 57% of people preferred interaction with staff, which was actually up since 2020, up since kind of COVID really kicked in. 43% said they like good efficient tech, but that was actually down 3%. 47% said they still prefer table service, which is up 12%. Only 23% ordering by an app, so it's significant, but that human contact is still very much dominating. And it really made me think about staff, about training, about where that space is now, what people are thinking about in terms of how their teams interact with customers. And I just wanted to bring you in at that point, Rob, because quite apart from your current business, which we'll talk about more, you've worked with some absolute kind of giants of the industry, whether it's Alan Yao, whether it's Terence Conran, whether it's Ian Trager. And I just thought it might be quite interesting to kind of talk about what you've learned along the way about service, about staff, and about the importance of that to an experience.
I think the people piece has never been more important. And I think when I was working with Ian and working with Alan Yao and working with Ashram Shamil at Dishoom, the whole people piece, especially now we've got the commoditization of restaurants and tech, and it's done all that. But actually, when it comes down to content and creating content, and the people piece has never been so important. So I remember, having a velvet rope outside, the Royals in New York. It was all about, picking the right people and choosing the right people who would have fun and enjoy it. And then you come to the queue at Dishoom, and you look at this, and the queue at Wagamama. When we first opened the first two Wagamamas, I remember the queue going up the steps and thinking, why are people queuing for food? So and it was part of that whole theatre. So it's the same sort of thing. It was actually making it more democratic, and it becomes more democratic when you making it theatrical. But the people, the team on the front line has never been so important, because whilst Deliveroo and all the tech companies can own all of that, when it comes to the actual experience in space, that has to be your people. And then once you've got that dialogue, you've got to own that content. You've got to keep that content. You've got to keep talking to them. So actually, whilst I think it's great, I noticed Giles Corrin reviews Ave Maria yesterday in the Saturday Times. And what was interesting was he didn't give it a great review. One thing he did say was they've got an incredible app called Sunday, which is really good. And I've used it several times. And what was brilliant is that, and you sit down and you talk to Victor at Big Mama and Sunday, and he'll just say that by paying for your food seamlessly through an app, enables you to have time to interact with your guests, longer time, and also to have a farewell experience of some sort. So I think there is a place for it, definitely, but when it comes to actually generating content and building relationships, you can't ever. And we all go out, and the thing we've missed is, we will never replace, is the human connection between, and you get an experience. So it's never going to go. And I think whether you're queuing up for Black Dahl or, Beck and Nar, or whether you're queuing up to get into a nightclub, there's still, you just got to make it part of the experience. It goes back to Disney, when you're queuing up for the rides, you make it theatrical, you make it fun. And I think that's what's really important.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, actually. It's something we will we'll return to in a little more detail. One of the other things that came out of the CGA data, which I actually found really gratifying and maybe went a little bit contra towards my intuition. One of the questions was, what would create a good experience for you? Talking about getting these people back out and dining and drinking again. 62% said visiting a venue that does things differently, and only 38% wanted traditional things that they already knew. And I kind of felt that people might fall back on familiarity, but actually it seems that actually they're looking for the thrill of the new. They want to be challenged, they want to be excited, and it feels like the marketplace is shifting, different concepts. And I wondered, Chris, from a Bruntwood point of view, across your estate, all the clients that you're dealing with, all the spaces that you're filling, are you seeing any shifts or new trends coming through? Is it old faces, new faces?
I think it's across the spectrum. We're still getting the inquiries from sort of the large national operators. We're still working with guys that have expanded regionally. I think post-COVID, there's been a lot of small independent businesses that started up through lockdown, may have lost their sort of their full-time job, started out something, Loaf Manchester, for instance, based in Pollard Yard, or Donut Manchester. Businesses that are just one-man bands who were initially working from their kitchen, and then they've had a load of success during COVID, and since then they're now looking for permanent spaces to actually house their business and grow it further.
Okay, and Simon, just to come back to you, seems to me, I was thinking about this when I was doing a bit of research for the talk today, that in a way you can maybe split experience into three different sections. You can either kind of ramp up the dining theatre of it, the kind of the Instagram moments and all the rest of it. You can look at secondary elements, social content, whether that's karaoke and have some food, or music programming, yes, or whatever it might be. Or you can really just focus on kind of pure old school, straight down the line F&B. And you guys really have pioneered this idea of kind of bolting on more than just F&B. Almost every one of your venues has a kind of third spoke to the wheel. Yeah. And is that something you've kind of planned in from day one, or is that from your background in events? Where's that come from?
I think plan is probably a bit too
around the time.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it's something that we kind of fell into, really. Ash and I, as a business partner on most of the operations, both come from live music background. So, and certainly for myself, I worked in Leeds for a company called Future Sound, used to run the Cockpit, which was the all kind of traditional, blacked out windows, sticky carpet, sort of indie music venue. And I was there for about 15 years in the end. Started on the bar and went through promotions and into event programming and that sort of thing. And it was always, the venue was closed for 80% of the time. It was only open one evening, from sort of, unless it was a gig on from 11 o'clock till 4 in the morning, and that was it. It's how do we activate the space at other times? And the Cockpit as it was just impossible to do that in that space. It was almost too far gone, I think, at that point. But having been to we spent a lot of time in New York at CMJ Music Conference and in Austin and South by Southwest, and I'd seen how venues could exist at all times of day. There was always a door that you went through at the back to go into the venue or into the gig room, and the front of the venue was always a barbecue place or a really good bar. So that we were very mindful of that when we created Belgrade, that we wanted a space that, yes, ticks the live music box for us, which was our sort of our main goal, but we needed it to be somewhere that people would go to during the day for a coffee in the morning, before lunchtime. It was hugely important for us. So yeah, the idea of more than one reason to go to a venue is kind of has always been key for us. Yeah.
And Jamie, are you seeing that across your kind of client portfolio as well, that people are trying to add more elements in there, or is it the traditionalists that are doing really well, where they're just focusing, doubling down on food and drink? What are you seeing?
I think without being sound too flippant, I think it's both. I think the reality is there's a place for all of those things, and I think that obviously kind of experiential things are heightened and probably where a lot of the focus is because of the attention and also the relativity of where we're at as a population. That's like too grand about things. I think people want to experience things, and there's a lot of exciting things to do and things popping up every week and whatever you want to do. But I think the relative of some of our customers is that they could just sell coffee and be really good at that and still be great at doing that too. So I think there's, as well as from what Sam says, I agree, to be able to leverage your venue amazing, but if you've got a simple operation, then don't overthink anything. You've got to add accessory into the mix to get people in at lunchtime tomorrow, because it can be bad at that too.
So we'll all be there for X-ray tomorrow, Jamie, all the team together. So Robbie, just back to you, because you mentioned Big Mama Group before, and they're a fascinating company, and a lot of people, when I was talking about the idea of experience in restaurants, including Lucy Noon, who's in this room, put forward Big Mama as one of the kind of exponents who are leading the way at the minute. And I went down a couple of weeks ago when you and I met up and went to Chicolo Popolari. And I suppose I didn't know quite what to expect, because everyone had talked about them in such referential terms. I kind of thought, is this going to be base alchemy? Is this going to be a complete reimagining of what hospitality is? And this isn't doing them down at all, but actually the brilliance of it was incredibly simple. It's just a beautiful room, it's good food, it's good service, it's good bus. They kind of turned it up to 11, but they're not reinventing the wheel. They're just doing the basics really, really well.
They are. And Gloria in Shoreditch was opposite my office, and we used to go, and it was just fun. It was just great fun and enjoyable, a bit of escapism and theatrical, and something to take pictures of, and it was engaging, and I think in that particular location, the design was Capri 1950s, so it was a narrative, and I think that's what people like about it. Especially in that part of Shoreditch, because it can be very cool for cats. So people were going in there and enjoying it, and then when the tourists heard about it. But one thing I thought is incredible, and they've done it really well through their lockdown as well with the pizza and the pudding, is they employ a lot of talents. And I think it's a bit like Pret. They are able to find people who actually make it. It's a bit like Disney. It's Disney-fied in the sense that you think you actually do think you're in Italy. And I've seen in Paris as well, when you go to big Mama restaurants, these Parisians love the fact they've got Italians looking after them, and and they're a bit they're not perfect, they're not slick. So some of them are a little bit grubby. Some of them just feel that they're a bit of bender, they might smell cigarettes, whatever. But it just adds to the whole essence, and I think it's really nice. They're able to bring that story to life, and also they spend money, and they're theatrical, and they do amazing. They think about things maximalism. It's not minimum. It's not anal sheep. It's let's just really push the boat out here. And if Wes Anderson was doing an Italian restaurant, he would do that, and I think that's what people want.
High praise. That's high praise. There was I was stalking you on Instagram actually, Robbie, and there was one hashtag that you kept dropping in, which is too much is never enough.
It is. I think that the idea of we've been through such a horrific time, and I just couldn't wait to get out. I suppose we all couldn't, but just give it me, just pile it all on, and I'll just take it for what it is. And in some ways, the pig, that was too much. There's a lot going on, and too much is never enough. There was an amazing architect called Maurice Lapidus who used to do this when I was working in Miami, working in Gilno. We had this incredible, all these hotels doing amazing things, but he would make it so that every single guest staying in, hotels at Fontainebleau had an amazing view, and he would over-design everything like a Busby Berkeley film set. And I think when it comes to restaurants and bars, we sometimes want that. I mean, House of Food that has that. You want a bit of escapism, and you want to just forget about the mundane stuff you're going through. And I think that's really important. So those guys, the Big Mama guys, do it so well. And I think as long as you've got a great product, amazing products, an amazing service, and a happy team, it's a no-brainer. But you just got to manage it properly.
And also, I'll just want to use this on it, but it comes back to a point that was touched on earlier about the idea of knowing your audience. And I think there's sometimes a snobbery against certain operators. And as examples of this, I would use people like San Carlo, even people like Tattoo, who are doing unbelievable numbers at the minute, where they've created an experience that is absolutely bang on perfect for their customers. They know exactly who their audience is. They deliver for them every single time consistently, and they don't maybe always get the credit they deserve. Maybe sometimes people forget that the kind of customer comes first, and you need to know who they are.
Well, no, I absolutely agree with Jeremy's always talking about the basics of hospitality, where it's great food and it's good service. It doesn't need to have answering in there. And I think whatever you think of those operators that you just mentioned there, if it's being delivered really well and they know their audience and they're connecting, then there's absolutely nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Not every offer is for every customer. It's know what you're about and delivering it.
Now, if you just hold on to the mic there, another question for you actually, just talking about things which seem to have gathered steam during COVID, going into COVID, and maybe accelerated by it. Collaborations is another thing which seems to be flavour of the month now. Everyone seems to be collaborating, and it goes back to that idea of creating a richer experience, more touch points, more reasons for someone to come through the door. And the first contact I had with one of your venues was at Belgrave Music Hall, where obviously you have music programming. You also have the kind of rotating street food guys on the ground floor. So it felt at the time that you were kind of quite pioneering in that. And now we're seeing like at the Refuge Hotel, which Robbie was involved in, they did a series with Eat Manchester of pop-ups there recently. Is this just a reaction? Is this explosion in collaborations a reaction to COVID? Is it about managing finances or managing risk? Or is it driven by the customer? Do they actually like seeing this kind of creative talent mashing up, whether it's food, whether it's art, whether it's music?
Well, I think at Belgrave, it was more by accident than by design. We ended with two kitchens. We could only have one idea for one of them, so we were kind of
spoiling the vision of you.
I know. Sorry,
strategic genius.
But it was a really happy accident. It was from that group Belgrave Feast, where there was a sort of monthly event with 5 or 6 street food operators taking over the venue, and it snowballed from there. Really, we thunderbusted their first pop-up there, I think, back in a long time ago, and another few restaurants started there as well. So I think the food element of what we did at Belgrave Music Hall was not at the forefront of our minds when we opened the venue. It was definitely a music venue that we opened that also did some food, but the food really took off. It took us by surprise, really. I think so. I think now the collaboration, it's almost I think there's an element of necessity to it as well. I mean, we've seen a lot in Leeds where you have you'll have a row of shops somewhere, and there's a bar there without a kitchen. There's a pizza place 2 doors down that doesn't have an alcohol license, and they're you've got pop-ups. They're just running pizzas down the road to the people who are sat outside the bar, sort of thing. So people do like it. It's definitely helping to drive business, but I think it, like I said, there's a bit of necessity there as well.
Did you also make a point?
Yeah, sorry. I think Sweet Green is a great brand in the US. They've got like 60 spaces, and they are like a salad bowl, sort of healthy casual dining concept. And one of the things they're doing some great stuff. But one thing they do really well is collaborations with some great people. And they'll get the founder of Peloton on, and she'll do a bowl or whatever, she'll do a salad bowl. And what I thought was interesting was, Joe Chang did something with kelp, which was like, wow, amazing. But what was, it's content. It just keeps it fresh. And I think that is what people, it's also, we can't compete with the platforms like delivery when it comes to infrastructure and logistics,
Convenience.
and convenience, but we can compete when it comes to keeping it interesting. So I think we want to create this sort of excitement and this buzz and talkability and craveability, and I think that is really brilliant. And also, just a necessity. The Bridge Arms is a great local pub to me in Canterbury. Really great. They're in the Ford Bridge Arms and they're doing a fantastic job. But they couldn't staff Sunday nights, so they're collaborating with other brands. And they brought in Taka and Madra from London and brought them over for the weekend and put them on Sunday night. That's interesting and that's exciting and it's unexpected. It gives people who live in that neighbourhood something fresh. And I think the teams working in those places, they like it because it's something else they can learn from and they can enjoy. So it is really good. You can't be, as long as the culture is right, who you're collaborating with, then it works really, really well.
Yeah. As you say, there's so many platforms for content now, and it's a really good way of keeping your offer fresh and keeping you engaged and giving your audience another reason to come back to the door. Okay. Just moving on to design, we did talk about this briefly before, but Chris, you and I bumped into each other the other day at the new Blunderbuss, which is in one of your buildings down at St James. They've got their own craft brewery in there. It's an absolutely incredible place. But I would say Blunderbuss is a really interesting one for me, because when they opened their first big site in Manchester, I took Jay Rayner there to review it, and he said, how many have they got of these? About 10 or 20? And I said, no, they've got a tiny one in Leeds, but this is their first big site. And I think what really struck him and struck me was how seamless the design was. Everything felt absolutely spot on, whether it's the lighting, whether it's the visuals on the wall, whether it's the tabletops, whether it's the menu holders, whatever. There was this real kind of continuity of brand. And to me, it feels that sometimes when you talk about customer experience, it's more important to get those details right than it is to do some big kind of sweeping green wall or whatever it might be. And I didn't know whether that's something you're seeing in other clients or in the market. Are people really thinking about their kind of continuity of brand because of those details right?
Yeah, I think so. Blunderbuss being a great example. I think they have a really sort of loyal fan base of people that go there. They know exactly what they're going to get. I think you see the same in Brewdog, who just opened the hotel there. They've got the green wall on the outside is really impactful. But I think when you go into one of their bars now, across the country, any of them that are newly fitted out, they all feel the same, they've all got the same atmosphere. And again, they've got a bit of a cult following because they're going there for the beer and the vibe. And so it obviously is a major consideration. I think building that sort of loyal customer base where people are coming back over and over again, they're doing that, one, because of the food, but two, because of the feeling that you get when they're in the spaces.
And Simon, just on House of Foo, I would say that's probably the other place that really struck me, where everything literally down to the little kind of tablet things that you had that held the menus, every single detail, the neon on the sign outside, the little kind of noodle bowl with the little heat waves going up. It just felt absolutely seamless. It felt that once I approached your door, let alone stepped through it, I was in House of Foo and I wasn't shaken out of that little journey until I paid my bill and gone. How much geeky detail went into getting every little element of that design and that experience right?
Yeah, very kind, Tom. Thank you for that. Yes, we spent a long time on it, but we had a long time. So the House of Food concept was born back in 2014, I think, and various false starts and sites that didn't quite pan out and licenses that didn't happen, pandemics and that sort of thing. We'd had 6-7 years to dwell on exactly what House of Food is going to be and sort of revisit initial reference boards and figure out exactly how we're going to carry that brand through. We worked with the Lucas from Surfland Hair, who did the branding for us. We worked with him on 2 projects prior to this as well, so we had a really good relationship with him. It was a good dynamic with the group. So it was a lot of fun. Ash and I think we met a contractor a few years ago who's done all of our sites actually, and we don't work with an architect, so it doesn't gel. So to be able to go like, well, what if that thing is pink, and what shape is that going to be? It's quite a fun dynamic atmosphere to do all that sort of stuff in it. It's good.
And I know we briefly talked about this before, Robbie, but it must be something that you think of with all your clients as well, that seamless 360 view of the experience. We talked before about Manor, about the soundtrack and how integral that is to the kind of dining experience and to almost the pace and the rhythm of the service. I personally had an experience a good few years ago now in a very serious fine dining restaurant, and then I realised the music was a Muzak version of Robbie Williams' Angels, which completely broke the whole experience apart around me, and I could never get quite back in the zone again. So when you're talking to your clients, can you get them to understand how important it is that everything, surfaces, lighting, everything has to be on point and on message?
Yeah, it's a massive thing. I've had some great bosses over the years, great clients, and I think we call it emotion per square foot. It's about creating this tiny little bit of emotion from that chair, and what does that chair do at 9 in the morning and in the evening. I think that's really, really key, and I think that there's a very strong emotional narrative architecture, and whether you and lots of hoteliers, lots of restaurateurs, they become designers. So it's easy to preach to them because they do listen to you, and most of the time it's really quite wonderful. I think the big difference I've noticed over the last couple of years is that you have to create a great design experience for the team who work there. And I think that's really interesting because the team have got to feel comfortable, enjoy it, relaxed. It's got to be an animal well-being for them. I mean, I'm looking at 2 big hotel projects at the moment, and we are looking at all food and drink elements. And we are starting with the staff room. And we're starting with the staff experience, the kitchen, the experience for the kitchen teams and front of house teams, what they experience when they're actually not working, and working backwards out of spaces. And I think that's really critical in creating an environment they love working in, and that they feel like they're happy about going to work and enjoying it and downtime. But also it's something that, there's got to be some nature in them. There's got to be, they've got to enjoy the music, they've got to enjoy the temperature and all those things, which are really key. So all those different jigsaw piece puzzles, you can, they're all as important as each other. The sum of the parts are much greater than the individual elements. It's not just about the design looking good, it's got to make people feel good. And I think that's not just guests, that's team members as well. And I think you've got to crack that. Especially now, I want to walk into a place. My sister loved the pig, and because it made her feel very special. And that to me is worth so much more than a designer or a restaurant operator, or a client saying to me, I want pink walls because it's my favorite color. You have to understand your audience and your team, what will make them have an incredible experience, and then design backwards. And then all that storytelling piece is brilliant. I was in the shoot this morning and just having breakfast. I'm glad I know the narrative for the shoot. I know the narrative for that space, and it all comes together. But when someone just sits there, when you walk into a restaurant, you want a surprising team moment. It's got to be the same for the team, because if you don't look after them in those spaces, especially today, they will go and work somewhere else. They will be looked after, and that's simple as it.
That's a very fair point. Jamie, I know you are not running spaces, but is there a kind of fundamental set of points of wisdom or lessons that you try to impart to your clients, your operators, about how they should be thinking about the training, about the tech side?
I think firstly, just agree with what Rob says in terms of kind of designing things where possible with the team in mind first. Well, from a school to a start is amazing. I think the basics from my perspective, and I'll defer to the operators and experts, but I think the reality is making sure that things that are integrated should be integrated, but your teams understand how they are, what they work, when they should be used, and what they're for, because I think there's a lot of experiences that are disjointed because of or making a front of house or back house teams difficult because of the fact that the tech isn't doing what it's, or not doing what it should be doing and what it should be for. And I think, just keeping it simple. I think, there's no, without kind of deflecting from the question in any way, shape or form, but I think the reality is that, a lot of the stuff we can talk about is overthinking things. And I think there's, delivering a great experience can be a simple thing or an amazing thing. And it's simple.
I think pushing new things on the skill side. Are you finding that the training requirements or what operators are coming to you with are changing? Or is it the same old kind of core skills that still matter?
Yeah, obviously there's more on, I think that the core fundamentals of being safe, or, Natasha's law goes live next week, and there's more important things around that are crucial. But I think that most of our time is spent talking about how to show people's progression in hospitality, how to show them what their next role is, what the next potential is, how to let themselves develop more effectively rather than having things pushed to them. What can they pull, what resources can they pull on? how can we support their well-being, not just on a one-off tick the box, okay, we've done a well-being piece of content or qualification, but how is that evolving relatively to the scenarios that you're dealing with right now? So staff shortage or closure for a few days because of COVID, all those things can have an impact on the team or an individual. So I think all those things are where we're typically being asked to support, or where our customers are proactively engaging themselves, and I think rightly so too.
Simon, I know we kind of we talked a little bit about House of Food before, but through this kind of chaos theory and happenstance on which you built an incredibly successful hospitality operator, do you think you've now kind of got a strategy? Have you got an approach where when you find a new site, you immediately think from a customer point of view, I know how we're going to build this and build this experience, the venue, the space, the brand? Have you got a kind of process that you work through?
Yes, I think we can see a site now and understand how it might work and see that sort of customer journey going through. Yeah, I know that's it's taken 5, 6, 7 sites to get to that point. I think we've got a fair understanding of how that.
And does it still start with the spaces for you? Do you still stand in there and think, how's someone going to feel when they walk in here? What are they going to expect?
Yeah, absolutely. And to a case in point, the site that we looked at with Chrissy today it's kind of going in there and it's fantastic space. It's understanding how what we would do would sit within that space and how the customer would see that. So we've got tradition of working with quite interesting spaces with like multiple levels and rooms hidden off to the side and things like this, and it makes there's a journey through the buildings which we always quite like, which we find works quite well. So
yeah, fantastic. And Chris, if I can just come to you, for you guys for Bruntwood Works, there's a slightly different slant or a slightly different dynamic. It feels like property companies are starting to think now more like hospitality businesses. You're not just selling a customer square foot, handing them the key, and that's that. You're thinking about curating your spaces. You're thinking about the operators that you put in on the ground floor for your office tenants above. You're thinking about the quality of the fit out, how the spaces flow. We're in one of your spaces today, one of your pioneer sites, and to be honest, the fit out is comparable to a lot of F&B businesses that you'd find around the city. And you're even looking at kind of building communities and adding value through that side of thing, the networking as well. So is this something that's really important for Bruntwood? Where did this thinking come from?
I think that everything that we discussed to this point that has some touch points or resonates with what we are trying to achieve, to, drawing inspiration from hospitality, with the main goal of increasing customer retention, also attracting new business. So making people feel at home when they come into the spaces. It should feel a little bit like a hotel service. The team on site are there to act in that kind of way and help the customers. We've got amenity on site, whether it's food and drink, gym spaces, a podcast room here, for instance, or even where we can have pop-up physio clinics and things like that. So just sort of broadening the offering there so that actually you do kind of have a home away from home when you're coming into the office.
And none of it feels kind of painted by numbers either. It never feels like there's obvious lazy choices. I'll just stick a person to do coffee in there. You seem to really kind of curate and think about the operators and the personalities and the brands that you're bringing into your spaces.
Yeah, it's always a conscious decision. We know sort of probably 2 years in advance of doing a pioneer scheme that it's happening, and then it's on the radar then to attract the right businesses to collaborate with in those spaces. So one of the first ones was one of them, Piccadilly by the station. Ancoats Coffee have been trading from there for just under a year now. We've got Bean just next door, Trove trading from Block, and then in Liverpool as well, we've got the 50 Spirits going in as well. So it's a very conscious decision as who will help us deliver that space.
It's great, and it's great that you're working with independent regional operators as well, rather than just looking at the covenants of the big boys and just seeing it as a box ticking exercise. It's fantastic. Well, I think we're just about at the end of our formal chat, but ahead of any sort of summary or conclusion, we're going to open up the floor. We haven't talked you all into silence and see if there are any questions for any of the panelists. Heather, I think, has a microphone, or are you going to take mine? Heather will have a microphone, so if there are any questions, please raise your hand.
So my name's Liam, myself and Tommy own a venue out in Leamington, so I suppose I've got a question for you, Sam. One of the challenges we face is where to market ourselves in terms of trying to attract our customer bases. So if we go too heavy sometimes on the venue side, has an adverse impact on, say, meat trade and stuff like that. So just wondering if that's something, you know, you've had to consider with your places and how you sort of manage.
Just to say as well, you do music and art in the spaces at the back. It's
Yeah. So we have a sort of multi-purpose space at the back where we curate art exhibition, gigs, theatre shows, that kind of thing. Yeah, film screenings, and then at the front is a sort of a craft beer area where we do that's a bar where we do beers, wine, and spirits.
So is it in kind of marketing for?
two different audiences, or are they the same
Well, this is it, I
audience or
suppose.
different-
So I suppose Bulgaria being the most obvious example. That was when that launched. We were conscious of putting the right acts, the right gigs in that space that helped launch the venue as successfully as it did. And those bands were a big part of why it launched so well. We were kind of we knew the crowd that we were trying to attract down there. So I guess it's just kind of identifying the crowd that you want to get into the front of the building, which is where you can turn over the money and booking your acts and your exhibitions and whatever's going in there accordingly, really.
Brilliant.
Do you think curating hospitality experiences itself can be considered an art form, or is it too much to consider an art form? Is it more of a very noble and creative craft?
There's a question. Yeah, we'll take it that one. Robbie, you like that?
I think it's a bit of both. There's a science and there's an art to it. I think you've got to look at Soho House. They really know their audience, so they curate to the nth degree. They put on, when it's programming, they put on what their audience wants, but they also bring in a bit of surprise and delight. And I think you've got to have that as well. So I think your programming is really important because, again, it's content, and the content is what will get you more relevant than Deliveroo. What anyone's doing, whether it's a GMX or whether it's whether it's Odeon, whatever. You've got to look at Secret Cinema. I mean, Secret Cinema is phenomenal because they really understand the audience and they are able to curate it to an nth degree. If you put the V&A are doing things with the Secret Cinema at the moment, and Somerset House are doing things with Secret Cinema because they know that audience is going to love what they're doing. So I think bringing in collaborations and getting people to curate things for you and saying to them, I'm working on a hotel project at the moment, and I'm taking two great bartenders, two of the top bartenders in the world, one in New York, one in Tokyo, and I'm getting them to curate the dream minibar, my hotel client, because I know they can do it better than I can. I want them, it's more interesting, it's more exciting. The same with your events, where you think about your audience, absolutely, but also bring in people who can add value to that and spice it up a bit. And just remember, it's content, and that content and having engagement with your audience is brilliant. And I think that's what we're all dreaming for. So.
Hi, hello, I'm Thomas. I have a question for maybe touches a few people. Do you feel that coming back from this pandemic now, obviously, I've been speaking to some people and they say that they're expecting their offices to start getting people back into the office, yeah. But I look at the demand that's going on at the moment, yeah, across different cities in the north of England, and England is slightly behind, yeah. But there's definitely a lot of demand going on. It's a different kind of demand. It's a different market. I see a different market out there, yeah. So as an operator, I see different people coming through the doors now on Tuesdays or Wednesdays than it used to be before. Do you think that with people coming back to the offices, my understanding is that they're not going to do 5 days a week in most places. They will come to city centres with a different mindset. So therefore, the market will be different. The office world will be different. Is the operator going to be different as well? Do we need to expect things to change going forward? Or do you think eventually everything is going to fall down to how it was a few years or months after before? Do you feel that there's a change coming, and we need to adapt to it, or is it's just a temporary thing?
So good question. Changing audiences, changing expectations. Does it need changing experiences?
I'm not sure about changing experiences, but I can speak. Thomas, you've got Zender in Leeds near Water Lane, which is one of the sites that we operate in. It's a really good case in point. So it's just south of the train station, and certainly when we first opened, it almost survived exclusively on office staff from around that area. There's quite a lot of big offices built up around there, and it was the slowest to recover, I think, from when so 4th of July 2020, which year it was now. So after the first series of lockdown, that was one that we were most concerned about, since we weren't going back to the office yet, and how it's going to affect. But we've actually noticed that trade is almost where it was sort of pre-pandemic now. But the clientele has changed almost entirely. We've noticed that there's obviously no suits in there whatsoever. That sort of daytime trade has gone.
It's the same guys that were wearing suits before, they're not wearing suits
Yeah,
now.
quite possibly. I don't think it is. I think what we're finding is that people who live in that immediate area are using those sites a lot more than they were doing
What did
previously.
they do before?
I'm not sure. I think whether they just don't want to go out as much into different areas of the city and they're just going to the nearest place near where they live. But
So then the market is changing.
yes, the market probably is, but the yeah, I suppose it probably will.
Workplaces change. So the workplaces change as well, though, because people might be coming in 2 or 3 times a week, more than 5 days a week, and they want to collaborate, they want to be creative, they want the culture piece. So you do find the needs. I'm working on Barclays campus in Cheshire, and we are looking at something drastic because that the need is there. The purpose of those spaces is slightly different. So we have to really think about how people are going to use those spaces. At the end of the day, in the workspace, anything which drives creativity or productivity helps retention and attracts new talent. You've got to think about that. So if that means reshaping, this space is a phenomenal space. This is a great space to be in today. Most spaces weren't designed like this, so it was all about, you had companies like Gensler designing the most incredible buildings, but they weren't designed around the human needs. So now workplaces will have to be designed around the human needs. And this was happening 3 or 4 years ago. It's massive now. And I think the operations in those areas will have to change as well, or they'll have to evolve, because their product will still be valuable, but they might need to work in a much more collaborative way with those workspaces.
But obviously the behavior of the people coming to the office will be different as well.
Absolutely,
Because the
absolutely.
space is different.
Yeah, they're using
And
those
you're only
spaces.
coming
Yeah.
less often,
Yeah.
therefore you're looking for more experience.
But they are, but people coming to those workspaces do want to do things different. They want to work in a different way. I can do things on Zoom or on meetings, Teams, but actually when I go to the workplace, I want to interact with my teams. I want to be creative. I want to share cultural experiences. I want to, all collaborate. That is more what's happening now when it comes to the traditional workspace.
Do you think that people will go out more? Like when they come to the city center, to
I
the
think
office, instead of bringing their
I
own
think they
lunch,
will.
might as well go and eat somewhere
Yeah,
else,
they will.
because it's one a week,
But they
once a week.
But they'll want to do with their
With their people,
colleagues
yeah.
and other people.
So
I
then
think
you were
that's really
saying that
important.
maybe there will be a little bit of boom when people come back, that they will want to need us more than before.
We
You know
hope
what I'm
so.
trying to say?
I think we all have our fingers crossed for a boom. That would be lovely. Any other questions from the floor before we wrap this up? I think we're just about running to time. I think we've done fantastic. Well, I think Robbie's last point actually is quite a nice summary, really, that it does feel like we're in a period of change, like the industry is moving incredibly fast. And I think when we first kind of looked at the idea of this seminar, it was maybe to try and crystallize whether this was all being driven by COVID or what changes COVID was driving. To be honest, I think a lot of these changes were happening anyway. And really there's just been an acceleration. Everyone's had time to think and everyone had time to step back. And it's maybe accelerated what was already happening in the industry. So I don't think there's any need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think the basics of hospitality is still as relevant as they ever were, and it's probably the best time you're ever going to get to kind of really look at your customer experience, your customer journey, and how to enrich that and how to step that up. And I think we'll sign off with Robbie's quote. Actually, I think emotions per square foot is the thing we all need to take away, and the thing we all need to have in our heads. So the final thing is a thank you really to the panel, to Jamie, to Simon, to Chris, to Robbie, to everyone who's attended live here in the room, to everyone who is watching online, and of course Bruntwood Works for hosting us all here in Blackfriars House. And now we'll say goodbye to everyone who's online. But here in the room, we're going to go and have our own hospitality experience in the Blackfriars pub around the corner. So take care, everyone, and we will see you soon. Thanks again.